I'm done with this game if the fishman isn't a fishman anymore. Is this something official? I mean, I don't have any problems with Fizz being yordleified, and I mean everything is better than his old lore, but these look more than short descriptions more than anything. They're kinda generalized and characterless. What the heck? Is Fizz a yordle? Or is he a member of an ancient Atlantean race that mysteriously vanished, like my stepdad? Is yordle a species, or does it just mean short stuff? Or are yordles the mysterious Atlantean race? How would that even work? He is a league murloc. There are more female yordles, they just don't join the league. That one's just sexist. Yordle race on verge of extinction? I know, I saw that the other day. Like, WTF, you mean he's an amphibious yordle? Have to hide this from my ADC main girlfriend who already hates my boy enough. Seriously though, they can't just take that easy out. He seemed to be a different species entirely in his past lore. Fuck you, Riot. I love that one, it's so poignant. It was already said back then that his species is related to yordles. Now they just went one step further. Not really that much of a problem in my opinion. Is Fizz a yordle, or just a short fishman / semi-sushi? He is semi-sushi. Retcon Magics XD. At least he's not a Vastayan. Fizz being part of a yordle subrace has been a theory since he was revealed. But that's just a theory. A game theory. So, what even is a yordle? A miserable pile of secrets? All male yordles have fur and female yordles have smurf-like skin. We clearly can see Fizz does not have fur and they refer to him as male. How the hell can he be a yordle? Mumu was at least ambiguous since the bandages cover his skin so we can't tell what's underneath. How is Corky a yordle if he's male and he looks like a regular human but small and with a big mustache? Rioter. We need to retcon Fizz's lore, like we do for everything else when it suits us. He's small and a humanoid animal. Can we sell him off as this hybrid thingy we pulled out of our butts a while ago? A Vastayan? Other Rioter? Probably not, Rioter. Alright, he's a yordle then. Yordle. Murder. No, but seriously, what are yordles at this point other than a way for Riot to say, oh look, I guess this smallish thing that isn't bald belongs to the species, so we don't have to make anything up for them. They're all significantly different in appearance, way beyond normal variation. The females I can buy so far as being the same thing, but the males completely lack any kind of uniform. Why is Corky even a yordle and not a little person? What even makes him a yordle? Miserable pile of secrets? The only thing that makes Triss a yordle other than Corky is her purple skin. Triss has blue fur and big ears and is basically the image of a standard female yordle. Maybe Cork Guy is part humane. A humane yordle hybrid. Did anybody not named Azir actually like Shurima? I really like yordles a lot. I knew he was a yordle. Told you all yordles are evil and need massive guttings and deletion. Cho'Gath is the best yordle. Yordles are just a mess. The females look nothing like the males, and even the males are so diverse you probably wouldn't lump them under the same species either. Fizz un yordle? No, Creo. No. Es un Vaselina. No. Well, after some amateur research on Google and stuff, I found an answer. Humans and yordles are quite related. Both seem to come from the mammalian kingdom, as both species have hair, and more importantly, breasts. What about Fizz? Limbs ending with web digits, which might give a significant relation to yordles. He has gills, but hinted by gameplay might have a lung system. No nipples, or the famous birthmark of a belly button. Therefore, genetically, he is somewhat too distant to be a yordle. But then again, hair is not quite efficient swimming feature. So yeah, conclusion, Fizz is not a yordle. though very likely to be genetically close to one. Although him being rather taller than a normal common yordle, he might also be closely related to a human. In my opinion, he is cute, and a friend of a shark, and that's all I really care about, to be honest. Smiley face. I'm fine with it. He doesn't look like a yordle, and his lore is interesting because he's something else entirely. It's bullshit. I mean, he should be. He's an adorable little fella. That's enough for me. Fizz the yordle's recent activity. No recent activity information is available for Fizz the yordle. Greetings, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of Fizzle Rants About Things. This one might be a bit dull for those of you who don't play League of Legends, or even those of you who do, who don't care about the lore, which is like 99% of people. But even in video games, I quite care about the writing, the world building, all of that jazz. And League of Legends, like Riot Games, has never had good writing, really. Unfortunately. Lots of games suffer from this as well. Like, Warcraft is really contrived, and the new movie that came out really brought that out, but I'm not going to be talking about those games. I'm just going to be talking about League of Legends for the time being, for this video. And it's just been bad. Like, it started at a 5, but I'd say it's down to like a 1 now. It used to be a Thor Dark World, but now it's a Suicide Squad. It used to be a Saw 2, now it's a Saw 5. It used to be Return of the Jedi, now it's The Last Jedi. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Now what we do is go back. So female yordles, they used to be a race known as meglings. And I guess they had these two separate races that do it with each other to further their species, I guess. Doesn't really make sense. They're dimorphic, so the females do look different from the males. The males are like little hamsters, and the females are just like avatar blue skin garden gnome type things. But I can understand them retconning them down to like just yordles. It was referred to as the megling genocide, but it's more like an assimilation, really. You know, people are being a bit melodramatic about that. I honestly think that was a positive change. What we do is we tend to name species based on what their physical traits are and whether or not they can breed with each other. Like horses and donkeys can breed together to bring mules, and all three are considered different species, even though they can do that because they look different enough. And that's kind of the interesting thing about biology. It never goes the other way around. So, go forward a little bit, they introduce this new character, Fizz. Yeah, this little bastard. Yeah, that's where I got my original character, Do Not Steal. He's from an ancient race according to the lore at the time, and that's all we really knew about him for some reason. Like, it was really bad writing, like, they could have fleshed it out. There was so much to flesh out, so much potential to do stuff with, to fix this, but they just never bothered. Instead, what they did was they uprooted the foundation that they set up, and they just said, oh, he's an amphibious yordle now. You see, what one issue with this, one big glaring issue, is that biology never works this way. You would never, like, even if you could find a fish that could breed with, like, a dog, you would never classify that fish as a dog, because it's just too phenotypically different. You hear me, Riot Games? They're too phenotypically different. You see, you can't say that this guy, with the tentacles on his head and the smooth, scaly fish skin and the fins and completely different anatomy, is the same as this land mammal. It doesn't make a lick of sense. So I went to the wiki. Yordles are sexually dimorphic and are much shorter than humans. Both genders rarely exceed 1 meter tall, with most averaging around 0.8 meters. Their skin texture ranges from being completely smooth to very lightly covered in fur to ultimately being significantly furry. Their hands have 4 digits, except for Fizz, who has 3, while their feet differ greatly depending on individual, from 4 to 2-digit feet, so they distinguish there. Their skin tone runs a much broader spectrum of colors than the human counterparts. Basically every color, essentially. Okay, and it's basically just explaining general biology. I guess that all fits, but it's kind of open-ended. Really, it's just marketing and just trying to make them look visually appealing to the customers, essentially. Yordles have exceptionally longer lifespans than the average human, because there's magic within all Yordles, which, if you guys don't know what magic is, it's basically just this plot convenience device to muddy over all of the things that don't really make sense logically, and then you can just say, oh, it's just magic. You know, it's basically a writing crutch. It's basically just trash writing. If you have magic in any of your stories are automatically a 1 out of 10. It's just garbage. The Yordle race have shown the possibility to be amphibious. Such an example would be Fizz. I had an argument with one of my online friends about the change, and actually I have a number of friends who have like Fizz clones, essentially, Fizz original characters, essentially, and none of them are happy about this retcon, including myself, really, because it's so dumb. They're trying to trim down, they're trying to do a bit of garden work, but in a way that doesn't make sense, because these are very, very distinctly different creatures, and before, the idea was that Fizz's species evolved into Yordles, and that kind of works, that kind of, you know, but making it so they're literally the same species, even though they're so different, doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And, you know, you could say, oh, Nar being a prehistoric Yordle kind of undermines that as well, it kind of contradicts that, but not really? I mean, that's what we say with, like, biology and evolution nowadays, is that, like, oh, you had Neanderthals, and then you go further back, oh, fish turned into us at some point. So it still follows along the same logic. I guess Fizz's species are supposed to be millions of years old or something. It's just like a bigger scale. I'm really okay with a bit of silliness in fantasy. But there's a fine line, like, and Riot Games seems to be crossing that. And unless they're doing satire, unless it's, like, overtly comedic or ironic, then it doesn't work. It's just suspending your disbelief too far, and it just breaks at that point. It has to follow some lines of logic when it comes to science and how people actually name things. And my guess is that no one at Riot Games has a Bachelor of Science degree, and none of them understand that this is a fundamental thing that you have to consider when it involves people or any sort of sentient being in your fantasy universe. Or they thought about that and they just didn't care, and they're like, look, our game is the most famous game in the world. Everyone plays it, and most people are morons, so we have to appeal to morons. And this is why I say, never appeal to morons. You know, you should never stoop to that low, even if your whole audience is morons. I mean, just look at me. I mean, I always try to strive far above, like, everything in the world, even though all of you guys are morons. And probably the only reason you guys listen to my stuff is because you're morons, and I'm, like, actually a talentless hack with these delusions of grandeur. Anyways, people might say, oh, I'm nitpicking here, but it isn't just this. All of the new lore has been awful, and they've been updating their lore, making it beefier, like a lot more words in it, but a lot more vapid, and a lot, just a lot less consistent. And whenever they do this, they've created such a big universe, essentially. They have 141 characters now, I believe. So when they change one thing, it messes up everything, all of the connections that they had there before. And they don't fix that. Like, Tom Kench has a taunt against Fizz that doesn't make any sense anymore, because Fizz is just a yordle. He's not the last of his kind anymore. He's just a yordle. So that's really weak. They had something interesting there. Something that does get tackled in quality films. Heck, I think even The Shape of Water is basically Fizz. But Riot Games doesn't want to bother with that. They don't want to bother with writing. I can kind of understand it, because really the reaction to writing has been so, like, nothing. Like, there's been almost no interest in writing aside from a vocal minority like myself. So I fully understand why Riot Games is doing this, but I think it should still be up for scrutiny. Like, they should still be up for criticism. And just to give a few more examples, Warwick and Soraka were rewritten, and it's almost identical, except that they Disneyfied it a bit. Like, they made it more kid-friendly, essentially. I was very upset with the rewrite between Veigar and Teemo. It's actually quite subtle, Veigar's is, but they add a little bit to the end that, like, oh, maybe he's not actually evil. Maybe he's just very misunderstood. And I think with the original lore, you could get that out of it. It was a subtle little thing that was quite interesting. Like, it's something that MatPat could have done a video on, like, oh, that's just a theory, a game theory. And when you figure those sorts of things out, that's kind of interesting. You feel like you've solved a puzzle. You feel like you're in on something that most people didn't understand. And then when they're just like, here you go, everyone, they just hand feed it to you, it takes that out of it. It doesn't seem clever anymore. It's just, we wrote a thing and we want you to know it now. There's no subtlety whatsoever to it, and therefore there's no depth to it. There's no purpose in it, essentially, because the impact of it is completely lost. It really makes the universe a lot less immersive, really. But yeah, other MOBAs, what they tend to do is they tend to have other games on the side, and they draw their popular characters from those games and they put them into this fun little game. Riot Games decided to start with a MOBA, which honestly turned out great. I mean, they made the biggest MOBA of all time, and it's funny because they're called Riot Games, but they only have one game now, and I don't think they have any interest in making other games. But they're kind of doing it backwards. It's like with the DC universe trying to start off with Justice League, whereas Marvel set up a universe. They're doing that, and it really, really messes things up. Because now what are they going to do? Branch off and make games based off these characters? I mean, that could work, but it's just... It feels convoluted, and nothing they have holds any water because they constantly change the fundamentals that these things are based off of, and maybe that's why they've never expanded to other games, because they're so tentative with everything that they've written that all of it could just change in an instant. Like, none of it means anything. For all this writing they've done, none of it has any substance to it, and they don't care for it. And I wouldn't care for it either. I don't care for it. I think it's bad writing. But really, you can build off of it. You can get an editor to improve these sorts of things instead of just scrapping it and rewriting it from the beginning and doing it worse and doing a rush job of it because you don't care and you just want to get it out. So I don't get what they're doing. Oh, also Twitch is a mass murderer who enjoys eating human waste. That's like directly in the lore. They turned him from like being this subversive character who's like this giant stupid looking rat who's actually kind of smart and surprisingly a good guy despite being crazy. They just turned him into exactly what he looks like. Like, he's just nuts and he enjoys disgusting things. I mean, that was the same before, but like now he eats poop. Okay, that's in the lore. You can read that in the official lore. and he's besties with Zach because Zach's goo, and goo is sticky, and Twitch likes gross things. So that's so funny, even though Zach's a very righteous character, and there'd be no reason why he'd be best friends with a mass murderer. Like, there's just so much of this stuff that contradicts itself. It is like The Last Jedi, where they just throw in humor even when it totally goes against the plot. It's just terrible. It's so stupid. And I don't get why people defend the writing in League of Legends or any game. Like, people defend just bad writing when if this was a movie, we wouldn't stand up for it. There's a reason why no video game movies have been good. It's because almost all these video games are written poorly. And there's no reason for that. There's no reason you can't have a well-written game. I mean, some games have been well-written. I've heard. I mean, I don't play many games anymore, and I don't play story-based games very much anymore, unfortunately. I mean, as much as I talk about how interesting that'd be, I just play League of Legends and then complain about how shit the writing is. It's all the kind of Mickey Mouse nowadays, and really, it wouldn't be hard to fix all this. I mean, it would be hard to write it masterfully, but to make it decent wouldn't be hard at all. And it definitely isn't decent. It's awful. It's really bad and could use some editing. You know it's bad when someone literally kills themselves over your writing. It's that dreadful. Oh, and Yordle Breeder says, how can I fuck what I can't see? Very, very... very thought-provoking. It's a very deep comment. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention, yordles aren't even yordles anymore. They're Vastaya, because Zaya says something that's like, oh, hey, you're giving Vastaya a bad name. So yordles are spirits, and fish are yordles. I guess fish are spirits, and spirits are yordles and fish. And just, it doesn't make any sense. It seems like they're just doing a cop-out where they're just like, oh, hey, it's difficult to write different creatures. Let's just call them all magic things. Magic things. Stay salty, press.